and those kind of things. So in the past few weeks, we had on public TV, during the main journal at 8 o'clock, when people are watching TV on a public TV with the money of me and all the citizens from France, an interview of Sergej Lavrov.
Il a accepté notre invitation. Sergej Lavrov, bonsoir. Merci d'être avec nous en direct de Moscou.
Hello everyone, I'm once again delighted having Romain le Quiniou in the channel. He is from the French think tank Eurocreative. Welcome to the channel.
Happy to be here, and thanks a lot for inviting me again.
Great. By the way, my name is Christoph Müller, and this channel Talk for Ukraine is the transatlantic and European bridge for supporting the Ukrainian democracy. Let's start with our interview. My first question to you would be, how are the chances of Jordan Bardella for the next elections? And let's just explain who is Jordan Bardella. He's from the Rassemblement National, so this is the populist party in France. How are his chances to win the next elections?
Well, in France we love the polls. Polling is really something that is spread in France, and you have a lot of polling every week and all these things. So at the moment, the chances of Jordan Bardella are great. I would say he's one of the most popular politicians in France. And when we test him on the polling, is most of the time, in almost all scenarios, winning the presidential election that will be held exactly in a year. So chances are great, but there is a long time to go, especially in French politics. A lot can happen. You can see that the race is not done yet, and I think that we should wait until at least the autumn to see who will be the different players. Still, Jordan Bardella is leading, and here we need to acknowledge a few things. First, he's very well placed to be the candidate of the National Rally, and the National Rally, the far-right party, even if there has been a lot of moderation from the far-right party in National Rally, there has been less Eurosceptic sentiments, we can say it, definitely, but still, today is the president of the National Rally, and we can say that is the likely candidate for one simple reason, is that the historic leader of the national right, Marine Le Pen, is in the middle of judicial affairs, and very likely, even if we cannot predict what justice will say, but very likely she will be barred from running as a candidate for the presidential election. So there is this feeling, there is this hypothesis, which is very likely, that Jordan Bardella will be the main candidate of the most popular political party in France, and by far. So this is what we can say right now. Now, we still have a lot of unknowns today. First, there is the far right, because as I said, now, the National Rally has been surfing on a political program that is more and more mainstream. So I would say to some extent that the National Rally became a mainstream party, a party that is always losing elections, but still a party that is part of the system. This is now the biggest political party in the National Assembly. They are very vocal. This is the first party of opposition today to government of Sébastien Lecornu. So, they are part of the game. They are part of the environment, I would say. So that's the first. Will they have some competition? And this is, a potentiality that we can see today, especially from the far right. And we can believe that maybe this competition from the right can also get the support from MAGA, and foreign interference is possible also in France from various actors. So that's the first unknown. The second unknown is how the center will hold or not. And as of today, you can see that there are multiple candidacies that have been announced, from the center left. So this is a lot of people, and the risk for the center and the mainstream parties is that the candidacies will be so numerous that they won't make it to the second run, which opens the way for a second run that would bring Jordan Bardella from the far right with Jean-Luc Mélenchon, for example, from the far left. And you could have this final that is basically portrayed today as the nightmare of the French democracy. So this is a possibility, but we again in France have many possibilities, and it's too early to call. One thing that we can see is that the left also is quite divided between the far left with Jean-Luc Mélenchon and the center left that has many potential candidacies, including former President François Hollande, that is more and more active in the media. But one thing we can see is that France is going and leaning towards the right, which means that a victory of the left, including in the second round, is very unlikely. And as of today, it's unlikely to see any candidate of the left in the second round. So this is what we can say today. Bardella is leading, but there is a long way to go. And we can see these days that Bardella is less and less secure when he's going to the media. And we can see also that there might be also some internal opposition within the National Rally for the candidacy of Bardella. So let's see.
So when you say less secure, does this mean he's losing grip, or what does that mean, Bardella?
No, losing grip would be too much, but it's always difficult when you are leading so long in advance. You have to master the different competitors, but you have also to make sure that you get the support of the whole party. And as of today, the leadership of Bardella has been imposed by Marine Le Pen, but has not been agreed by everyone within the party. So you have these two problems. And then also, there is the need for Bardella to exist while not completely absorbing the leadership of Marine Le Pen, because as of today, she's still candidate. I mean, Justice has been declaring her barred from elections, but still there is an appeal. So Bardella is playing this, quite difficult game also of being the likely candidate with the highest popular support while not being sure to be the candidate 100%. And again, this is in 1 year, so there is a lot to do. The second problem also of Bardella is to try to have a position that satisfies everyone. I mean, the National Rally has an ambiguous political program. They are conservative on the societal values, but they are quite left-leaning when it comes to the economy. So you aggregate a lot of electorate, and same for the foreign policy. We know that the far right, the National Rally, has been close to Putin, but Bardella is taking another step, another direction, right? Is refuting this, he's refuting this heritage, and is having a quite balanced, rather pragmatic following his own electorate, which is very split on the support of Ukraine or the support of Russia. It's basically 50-50. So Bardella is very cautious. You can even see some politicians from his side of the party being quite vocal in the support of Ukraine. So, this is a complex internal and external political game at the moment, which is not decided.
So this is really difficult to judge then. With Marine Le Pen, it was completely clear she's absolutely pro-Putin, and Putin supports her. And what about
Absolutely.
What about
now?
Bardella?
She tries to hide it, of course, because every pro-Russian today, and especially since 2022, is not anymore a vocal pro-Putin or pro-Russian. It's only someone that is calling for peace and calling for dialogue with Russia and calling for re-engaging.
Yeah, but if somebody calls for peace and dialogue, this is camouflage. It's fake.
I agree with you.
Absolutely. And do the people fall into that trap, or do they understand it? Here in Germany, we have this big problem that the AfD, which is also the far right pro-Putin pendant, and they are also rising in the German Bundestag. It doesn't seem to be a big problem to be pro-Putin here. How is it about France?
I mean, it's not just about France. It's about every populations, every democracies. Let's look at the past two elections in Europe over the past 2 weeks, Bulgaria as well as Hungary. People didn't vote for foreign policy. They didn't vote because someone was too close to Putin or supporting Ukraine or not. People in Bulgaria voted because one guy, former President Radev, now future likely Prime Minister, said that he is the one that will end corruption. Is it true or not? Who knows? Probably not, to my opinion. But that's only my opinion and the opinion of many people in Bulgaria. But people followed because he promised the end of a system, of a corrupted system. In Hungary, did people really voted against Orban because he was too close to Russia? I think some of them did, but not everyone. Absolutely not. And many people voted especially against Orban because the economic system was bad, that the growth was not there anymore. The inflation has been extreme in Hungary over the past few years. The public services have been deteriorating, health, education. So basically, what impacts the life of citizens is the driver of any election. And if you look at France, the situation is not great for many people. People have been disappointing in majority. They have been disappointed by traditional parties, the center-left, the Socialist Party, as well as the traditional center-right, the Republican Party. They put them out. And this is why Macron succeeded, because he was able to say 10 years ago that he was someone, just not from the classical parties, and he succeeded for that. Now people categorize Macron as someone from the system as well. People are anti-system. Why are they anti-system? Because again, they are disappointed, but also because that they feel insecure. And this is not to say if it's true or not true, but they feel insecurity in many levels. First, this is an economic insecurity because they can see that the level of life, the level of the quality of life, the purchasing power is diminishing. This is sometimes an impression, but this is also a reality that us in Western Europe and us in France, compared to other countries, we can see, and compared to former generation, we have the impression at least, and probably the reality that, the quality of life is decreasing. This is also an insecurity when it comes to security. We can see that, there is a lot of things. There was the COVID, now there is the war in Ukraine, so war in Europe, which has been shocking even for French citizens. In 2022, I can tell you that French citizens in the vast majority was really shocked about the return of war. Drones in Europe, those kind of things. It makes people afraid, but it's also about internal security. And you can see, once again, sometimes it's an impression, it's a feeling, it's a sensation, but it's also a reality for some people, especially in the mid-sized city. They feel much more insecure because of different things, especially because of this rise of criminality, petty criminality most of the time. But this is what they feel. And the third one is the insecurity at the cultural level. This is in the debate. This is all these debates about woke, not woke, about gender and all these things. And it makes some people feeling insecure. And basically the National Rally, as much as some other parties from the far right or the far left, or also from the center, those kind of populist, entrepreneurial, political parties outside of the system, they've been able to capitalize on these fears, but they've been able also to convey some narratives where they prove to people that they understand them because they talk about these issues, right? And they provide solutions. Not providing, but they suggest solutions. It's not the same as providing solutions, but at least they say to people, we hear you, we understand you, we feel you, and if we are elected, we will not act as the mainstream parties that are ignoring your life, ignoring your problem. We will act, we will deliver. Is it true or not? That's another question. I think that most of these parties just promise but won't be able to deliver. But still, this is how people feel. And you cannot really, be against those people. I mean, this is pretty normal to think about this. And this is what we see in France.
We have exactly the same situation in Germany. I personally, I am absolutely sure, as you just also described, that those far right parties, they can absolutely not deliver the solution, but they are the counterpart of those established parties who have already been there for a long time. And so I know people who are going to vote for the AfD, and that's why I'm asking you as a French, how is it in France? I feel it that it's the same. But the real danger, the real threat is, as we both know, is coming from Russia. And that's why a party who has some bonds and some ties with Russia, or is putting down the danger which is coming from this regime, which is a criminal regime,
yes,
it has to be better communicated, and that's what I want to ask you. Is this focus on Russia in the public media in France a topic?
Yeah, maybe I agree with you, but even if it's better communicated before to answer your question, I mean, there is a reality also, and for someone, that has an ordinary life, and here it's not about arrogancy or something like this, but if you do 8 to 8 and you wake up, you don't like your job, your first thought is not about Russia. Your first thought is to make sure that you will have food in the fridge.
Sure.
And this is why, even if I agree with you, and many people agree with you that Russia is the big danger, it's a long-term danger. The short danger for some part of the population, whether we like it or not, is to be sure to be able to pay the rent and to have food in the fridge, and sometimes to have just holidays. So this is the difference, and this is how it is, and this is politics. And here we need politicians to convince people that real danger is indeed foreign policy, and that if the danger coming from Russia is coming to us, then you will have also those problems about food, about daily life, about liberty, about democracy, about all these things. So it's how you frame it. And I agree, this is about politics and this is about media. When it comes to the media, I think that over the past few weeks, we had some issues in France, and we are not the only country where we have some issues. I think that the media have been very good at the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Much, 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 much better than 10 years ago, 10 years before, sorry, when Russia invaded Ukraine already in 2014. So I think that the media have been much better. They try to cover it more professionally. We had many experts coming to the TV day and night, trying to explain, trying to really raise awareness to the media, to the journalists. A lot of people have been on site in Ukraine. Unfortunately, tragically, we lost French journalists that have been killed by Russia over the past few years. So, the media have been doing a good job. But unfortunately, some of the medias and some of the journalists are still irresponsible. Why so? Because you have this problem of media today. And I mean, it's easy to criticize. I understand why. It's a commercial, it's a business after all. But there is this problem of sensationalism. They need to have audience. They need to make money. If not, the market is in crisis. And so you have this problem of some journalists who prefer to basically trade professionalism instead of nice images, a different behavior, trying to capturate another audience and those kind of things. So in the past few weeks, we had on public TV, during the main journal at 8 o'clock, when people are watching TV on a public TV with the money of me and all the citizens from France, an interview of Sergej Lavrov.
Il a accepté notre invitation. Sergej Lavrov, bonsoir. Merci d'être avec nous en direct de Moscou.
You had also an interview a few weeks ago, a few months ago maybe, at the radio of Dugin. So you have some of this media that want to play the role of, we are the media, we are independent, so we are giving the voice to everyone. I remember also, representatives of Russian embassy to be invited to discuss. I mean, we cannot do that. This is not about free speech. This is not about liberty of the press. This is about just giving the voice to propaganda. And this is a problem here. And I think that we collectively don't understand the role of the media today, and we need to be collectively better at this.
Did I understand you right? Recently, there was an interview of Sergej Lavrov and of Alexander Dugin in the French television, or what?
Television and radio, yes, absolutely.
This
and
is
that's
incredible.
The big problem, because here media are basically playing the game of populistic politics, and that's danger.
They claim to be equilibrated, and this is a thing I think should be really forbidden. I mean, this is propaganda, and the propaganda is a weapon. The Russians are using it, and that is what I'm wondering also. But things like that I haven't seen in Germany for a long time now. It was in 2014, as you mentioned, different. And there was also the Russian ambassador in each talk show in Germany. The Ukrainian ambassador was very rarely in the German talk shows, but the Russian one was very often there. Also, other people from his bubble. But after the full-scale invasion 22, this changed. This changed. But in the German Bundestag, this pro-Russian party AfD, they are there, and they are gaining also ground. So the media, they have such a power and such an influence. how to bring them more to clarity that they should think strategically, or they cut away their own the roots of democracy if they carry on behaving like that.
It's a difficult thing, and I mean, once again, media are free, they're independent, so at the end of the day, they do what they want.
But they should not be stupid.
Well, yeah, but a lot of people should not be stupid, and at the end of the day, we have many stupid people, you know. So at the end of the day, this is part of the game. This is part of democratic game, and we need to be collectively better. It's a cycle also, and you know, stupidity reinforces stupidity, intelligence reinforces intelligence. So we need to find a way to be collectively more intelligent, to have a society that is more resilient, with media that are more resilient, with politicians, political parties that are more resilient. So it's a cycle, right? And we will see, but it's also a collective need to be conscious about change of societies, about change of democracy, and to adapt our behavior, to be more vigilant about what is being said in the media, in the social networks, and to basically be able, and here it's more for the politician, but to be able to create again a narrative about why should we stand for democracy, why should we stand for free speech. The problem is that over the past few years, we've been unable to answer, for example, US interferences, or rather Trump administration interferences, because they were just telling us, you are limiting free speech, and we were unable to answer because we cannot define free speech. Basically, we don't have a powerful definition about our own lives, about why the EU is important, why democracy is important, why free media are important. And I think this is a big problem, because if we are not able to have representatives able to define this, it's very difficult to convince citizens. So, you know, we have this bad cycle where we have politicians who are not the most professional, not the most clever, to be honest, with electorates which are basically very disillusioned by the current developments, afraid, and you know, this is mutually reinforcing, I would say.
Yeah. So the next question would be now, how are the French people thinking about Ukraine joining European Union and Ukraine joining NATO? How do they think about that?
That's complicated to say, because I mean, French people are traditionally and generally against EU enlargement, at the political level and at the citizen level. So you can see that in the past. For example, France has been, very catchy when it came to the United Kingdom. It was for different reasons, but still, that was politically and strategically difficult to accept for France to have the UK part of the European community back in the time. France was blocking Spain, for example, for agricultural reasons and other things. A few decades ago, France was not very happy about the fast track, and it was not so fast. Let's put it that way. Of the Central and Eastern European membership after the fall of communism, France was not very dynamic for any other candidacy, I would say. France blocked also North Macedonia and Albania a few years ago. And what you can say, what you can see today is that France is not very vocal, because I think that since 2022 or since 2020, with the speech of Macron in Bratislava, France declared officially that they are in favor of enlargement for the Western Balkans, for Ukraine, for Moldova, for Georgia back in the time, and now it's not a question anymore because of the authoritarian drift from the Georgian Dream authorities. But still, France is okay with this. The reality is that you can see that French authorities are very cautious. First, they are not driving any enlargement debate and progress into the EU. They say basically that, guys, we are okay because we have too much to lose if we oppose. But at the same time, you need to understand that if we enlarge, we need to reform. But France is not driving any reform of the EU. It is a very difficult process. There are a lot of divisions. So France is really on the back seat when it comes to enlargement. Not blocking, but trying to moderately support it. Also, the elections are approaching, and French people are generally against enlargement. They are mostly against for everyone. You can see it. It's more or less 30 to 40% of positive opinion regarding any enlargement. Ukraine is just slightly up. And my explanation is that French people support Ukraine, support its fight, and it has a positive effect towards the opinions on enlargement. The reality is that if you have a political campaign about enlargement, probably we will lose it because we don't have the politicians to campaign about this. They are not convinced and they cannot convince the electorate right now. And you have a lot of frustration from the French society for weird reasons, actually, about enlargement, because French people believe, and I think they're wrong about this, but they believe that they basically were abused because of enlargement. They lost money or economic power. France lost influence at the political level and at the strategic level. They were in competition for employment, those kind of things, which I think is not true. We had benefits about the expansion of the European Union, and I say it in a positive way, not in a in a negative way. But we don't have numbers to prove it. Basically, you don't have any analysts that are working on this at the moment. And so the French are very, against it. And basically, a last point on this is that if there is an enlargement process, France has two ways to accept it. Either it's a public referendum, and here there are high chances to lose it, or it's a 2/3 majority within the parliament, so both the National Assembly and the Senate. And at the moment, and most likely after next legislative election, potentially after the presidential election, we might be in a position that is even more negative than what it is today. So yes, French are against. The narrative is not there, so we need people to build this narrative why Ukraine is important. And basically here it's about Ukraine being a strong advocate for French vision of strategic Europe, basically a powerful Europe, a strategically autonomous Europe because of defense industry, because of a powerful army, because of strategic resources such as food security, raw materials, as well as a deepening of the economic market. And here I'm referring, on the opportunities for French business about reconstruction of Ukraine, but also about the added value of Ukraine when it comes to nearshoring developments. So all these things we need to convince people. They are not convinced in France, and it will take some time. This is why the fast track process accession of Ukraine is completely unrealistic, especially because France is not on board either politically or socially.
I mean, it's not about only about economics. It's in the first point about security, and there is a war going on, and Ukraine is fighting all alone for 4 years now, fully. And even the last one should have understood that it's about weapons, it's about fighting, it's about death, it's about killing, and it's about defending. And Ukraine is the only country here in Europe which is able to fight against the Russians. So it's about defense, as I said. And therefore we have the NATO. And NATO now is under big threat because of Donald Trump, who is also making weird things, let's say it calmly. So Europe is all alone here. Everybody should understand that. And Ukraine is a big security factor. And so you mentioned all the time the word enlargement. That sounds negative for me. But then you said also expansion. That sounds kind of positive. We should remember, why have we created the European Union? Why have they done it? It's because of economy. But this economy was under the umbrella of security coming from the NATO, under the leadership of America, which is out now for the moment. Let's hope that they will come back. But we have Europe. We are on our own. It's how I feel it. How do you think about that?
Yes, but this is something that we don't see in France, especially, is that the enlargement of the EU was double. It was, I mean, basically the fact that Central Eastern European countries joined the family, the West. It's about the EU, so the economic, the prosperity, all these things, the rule of law, the democracy, yes, but it's also NATO and the security. So they were joining as much Brussels as Washington, and it was part of the Euro-Atlantic family. They were not just joining the EU. And I think here the reality is that for Ukraine it won't be the same. They might be able after some years to join the EU, and I think it will be very long. But when it comes to NATO, this is a no-go today because at least the US is opposing. Now, when it comes to security and all these things, we can find some formula. But I think that a large majority of European countries understand, and quite rightly, that at the moment we still need the US in terms of capabilities and all these things. And especially we need NATO. And it's not just so much about the US, it's really about NATO. What I don't like in the current debates is this, again, populistic approach of some of the politicians. And here I can mention one specific example because I'm sure that he's using those talks and this exaggeration for domestic purposes. It's Sanchez from Spain saying that he's ready to build European army and all these things. We have already European army. It's called European armies under the umbrella and the command of NATO. This is the European army. We don't need to pretend that we will build a unified European army.
No, we don't have to remake a European army. Of course not. We have everything. But what is missing is the political will or the unity. We had this leadership of the United States of America who also contributed the biggest part of the NATO. But now Europe is on its own, and all of
if I may on this, the question is not about with or without US leadership. Everybody knows that there is a difference between acknowledging it and knowing it. I understand, but everybody understands, I hope at least, that the US leadership is withdrawing, right? Yeah. So the question is about, will it be fast and abrupt, or will it be evolving? And I think that most of the countries, including France, I believe, is hoping that the US will withdraw continuously and little by little. Of course, it won't be in 10 years, it will be in a few years. We understand that very much. But everybody hopes that it won't be in the Ankara summit in a few weeks, right? Mm-hmm. And so everybody tries to find a way that we will adapt, but we hope that it will not be one day overnight. And this is where I think we need to be more responsible, because it will happen and it will happen fast. And here we need people to really accept this logic and make it a reality for the citizens, because this is what we will live, and which means that we will have to pay for that. This is not about the end of NATO. Again, our politicians have the responsibility to say the fact. It's not because the US is withdrawing from Europe that it is the end of NATO. We need a different NATO. We need a European pillar, a very strong pillar of European within NATO. And, we need to focus on concrete progress and concrete advances. And I think that we can advance with Ukraine, even if Ukraine is not strictly part of NATO. We can have some cooperations, we can have some funding mechanism. The EU is trying to do it right now. We can have some coalition of winning, but we need some content, some precise things to advance on. And I think, for example, that me personally, I'm a bit disappointed that for the past 2 years we focused our narrative on the coalition of willing, which for me is not a coalition of willing. It's the coalition of the unwilling at the moment.
Yeah. This sounds weird.
Yeah, this coalition is not built on something concrete. It's built on a fake hypothesis. And the fake hypothesis is to say that Russia might decide war, so there will be a kind of peace or ceasefire, and then we can build a coalition. I think this is the wrong assumption. We should build a coalition of willing, which is not dependent on if Russia will accept or not to make peace. At the moment, let's be very honest, there is 99% of chance that Russia is not willing to make peace in the next few months or next few years. So, I think that we need to have strategic leaders, statesmen and stateswomen that are facing the reality and not trying to build initiative and strategic initiatives which are not based in reality. This is what we really need if we want to achieve a European security within these changes, especially from the US.
Yeah, but when we talk about security, the Ukrainians, they are really those who are doing the whole job. They are fighting. They are also developing new weapons all the time. They last week they launched even 2 rockets, two missiles into the space. I heard. This is incredible what they do. So they are on the technological side. They are on the bravery side, and they are on the willing side. They have leadership qualities. So why don't we put them into our security system in the European Union or in the European part of NATO? Why don't we include them on eye level?
Because we don't accept the reality, and the reality is that today Ukraine brings more to Europeans that Europeans can bring to Ukraine, which
Right.
for different reasons is not acceptable, because this is about competition, this is about domestic public opinions, this is about financing, and so this creates a lot of frictions, right? And you can see that the relations between Ukraine and many member states in the EU is not so easy. It's very nice under the cameras, but behind the scenes, there are a lot of frictions because it creates a lot of issues, right? So, and it was the same, for example, when we collectively decided to train Ukrainians. I mean, after a few weeks, most of the people were saying that the Ukrainians kind of were training or teaching some lessons to Western European armies, because those are the guys that have been in the fields, in the warfare, and not vice versa. So, we need to accept the reality there. This is about finding a new framework for a new European security architecture where Ukraine will be one of the country at the center of it. But this is about accepting it, because not everyone is currently accepting the reality here.
So it will take a little bit more time, but I hope that the last one will understand it very soon, before the governments will change to the bad. When you say that Bardella has good chances, I don't know what's going on. And in Germany we have the AfD, which also leading in the polls, and I also cannot understand why this happens. And look at England, there you have Nigel Farage. So all these guys, when we get in our ancient old democracies in Europe, we get these governments, then the situation will be pretty bad, I think, because the clear side will be gone for a while. Look at Hungary; they had Orban for 16 years, and now finally the Hungarians, they understood, okay, we have to get rid of this guy. So do we always need to get these people in our governments who create a lot of mess before we get rid of them, or just let's keep them out right away? So
but the question is to know if it's the fault of voters or the fault of the leaders we had over the past few years.
Of course, you are right. They didn't do a good job. Of course,
collective responsibility, and this
absolutely
is what we should learn before it's too late.
So I mean that's a good finishing word. We already have more time than we decided in the beginning, but it was so interesting. Romain, thank you very much for this very interesting interview, and that you took so much time to talk with me. And
thanks a lot for the invitation. That was really nice to be able to say a few words, and I'm very honored to be part of this show. So thanks a lot, and looking forward to next time.
Thank you very much. See you the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.